I'm Jason Klom, and this is Comedy on Vinyl. The year is 1961, the album, Do-Re-Mi, the artist, Phil Silvers and others, but mostly Phil Silvers. And my guest this week, Steve Everitt. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Jason. It's a total pleasure.
Thank you very much. Same here. Now, this is one of those, we know each other, but we only know each other from me being a fan of Phil Silvers, you being a fan of Phil Silvers, you having started the original Phil Silvers fan club, and me joining 21 years ago.
I was going to say, 21 years since we've actually spoken sort of face-to-face on the internet, isn't it, really?
It's crazy, and I'm sure I emailed you and bugged you a few times during that period, because I know at one time, I would still love to do it, one time I was trying to make a Phil Silvers documentary. That was going to be the thing that was going to make me... Even though, why would I do that in a country where no one remembers him, unfortunately?
Well, yeah, we've been contacted by somebody from Ireland that may be interested in doing.
Oh, that'd be good.
So,
that'd be wonderful. So tell people a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into why you're such a big fan of Phil.
Okay, yeah, my name is Steve Everitt. I'm a huge Phil Silvers fan, as Jason has alluded to. I've run Phil's Appreciation Society now for 35 plus years. Wow. We've run his museum for the last 5 years, and we have quite a close family relationship with his daughters. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Now, as I mentioned also, Phil Silvers weirdly has maybe not weirdly, just unexpectedly to me, has a bigger fan base in the UK than here. And I don't know, do you think it's because they have continued to run the Phil Silvers show on occasion on television, or what?
I think that's the prime consideration. Bilko started on the BBC in 1957, and then it was repeated on and off until 2004. So we had 47 years with the Sarge, and we just never grew tired of watching it. Phil did allude with the American screenings after the initial broadcast, when the reruns started. By the late 60s, the Vietnam War had started, and he thought that military comedies had fallen out of fashion with the Americans, and they sort of never really picked it up after that. I guess there's probably some truth to that, but I don't understand why America doesn't hold Phil in the same esteem as Lucille Ball or Jackie Gleason or Sid Caesar or Ernie Kovacs. He's not up there with them in America, but here in the UK, we've always and will continue to love him and his work. He's one special guy to us, as you probably know. Yeah,
well, it's crazy to me, if only because, I think I have heard, I deal with other people who do similar work to you, and also who are archivists for, specifically, I know Ernie Kovacs archivist because he is Edie Adams' son. So, right, yeah. So there's a little mad world connection. He often talks about, pardon me, he and I often talk about how it takes a little bit of nudging to get people to talk about like Ernie Kovacs or whatever. But I've also heard the same thing about, like, there are very big stars who are Phil Silvers fans, but there's no outlet for them to be like, yeah, I would love to talk about Phil Silvers, which is, a good reason for that documentary to exist, or anything to exist that explores Phil's life. Because, these people, nobody's asking them about Phil Silvers because nobody's thinking about him over here. When's the first time you saw him? Saw Bilko as a kid?
Well, it would have been. We used to have Bilko on late night on a Sunday night. It used to be the last program on BBC One before close down. And I was living at home with my parents, and they'd all gone to bed, and I was just channel hopping. There was something. I think there might have been an Outer Limits or something on BBC Two, and I flipped over to BBC One, and I can remember the first episode. It was called The Empty Store, so it's one of the first shows to be filmed. And I sort of tuned in about halfway through this episode, and I just sat there like, this is really good. And I'm like, but it's black and white, it's old, but it's very fast, it's very frenetic, it's very sophisticated comedy. So the next day, I was quizzing my father on what's Phil Silvers doing, because this time he was living quietly in semi-retirement, forced semi-retirement, and that's how really it started. And then I decided I wanted to set up an appreciation society, and everybody thought I was crazy. Well, Bilko, it's just Bilko. Nobody will want to join a club. And we launched the club with the help of my co-founder Mick Clues in 1984. We'd at this point been writing to Phil because we'd made contact with Phil through his eldest daughter Tracy.
Okay.
And we used to send him Christmas cards and birthday cards, and basically just he loved. He'd got these two boys from the UK who had adopted him, and he was very thrilled that his fan base in the UK was still very much active. And he gave his blessing for the Appreciation Society in October 1985, and sadly he passed away in November, a month later in 1985. So this year is it's the 20th anniversary of Phil getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Wow, yeah.
And we were responsible for that as well, because his family had been fighting 15 years with the Hollywood Committee to get him a star on the Walk of Fame. And we applied in 1999 and sort of just said, look, this is what this guy has done. Bar Bilko, he's had a massive, illustrious, very long career in all forms of show business. Give the guy a star, and happily they did, and that's when we got to meet the family. But time, it's 20 years ago. So we'll have a little event at the museum on November the 1st.
Wonderful.
That sort of time, if we can do it, if this coronavirus thing has all died down a little bit.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy. That's that's remarkable. That's one of those things where if I feel like if you're a big fan of a big enough fan of something, you want to. There's no way you can really ever pay them back, and that. Although at the end of the day, clearly somebody like a Phil Silver was like, "Oh, holy cow! I've got this fan base that's like that is enough. That's enough of a payback." But I love that you got to do the full no. We're gonna get him his star on the damn Walk of Fame, even if
it was hard work, and you had to really sort of batter the committee because
I bet.
They were quite stubborn, But Phil was a very quiet, humble man as well. So when he recorded his last interview with the BBC, which was for the 30th anniversary of the Bilko show, which we were invited on to, he said, "I've got two boys in England who have adopted me," and the interviewer said, "Well, we have a surprise for you, Mr. Silvers. We have these boys in the studio with us." And he just paused and said, "Oh, do you? Give them a warm hug for me." So he was very appreciative that we were, we were very young at the time, and to have this connection with one of comedy's greatest talents, and to find that he was very much a family man and very down to earth and very quiet, and the polar opposite to this character that he played on screen, which goes for a lot of comedians, it's an outlet for them, but in real life he was very quiet, very shy, and very retiring, and just appreciated everything we'd done for him. So
that's so good.
It's nice to have that relationship, and it continues to this day. Tracy is the main person responsible for Phil's estate, and we have a very close relationship, and we guard it. We guard his reputation on Twitter, especially, because there's a few people out there that want to sort of, stick the knife in. So we're there to protect him, while he's, he can't protect himself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there are, obviously we all know of the garbage that's on Twitter, but I am part of a few different fandoms on Twitter where exactly that is happening, where it's like, there's a little bit of protecting going on, and there's just a preservation of something that, we don't want to go away, and that includes, and I do this podcast which is funny because half the time I'm doing it about, not half the time, but every once in a while I'm doing it about records that I don't necessarily care about. I do like when an opportunity comes up to actually celebrate somebody that people don't know enough about, and who it still boggles the mind to me if you consider his history. I mean, he started as a very young singer, which, by the way, I love that you picked a musical thing, because it got me, again, in the mindset of, he was a singer first. He was a singer first. In his autobiography, I got to tell you, that was one of the first, that got me hooked on entertainment autobiographies. Him describing some of the stuff that he witnessed as a very young man in these mob-run nightclubs. I was like, Oh my God! That just opened my mind up to this insane world of what entertainment could be.
I think he was about 8 at a stag coming out of jail party, and he was performing on stage, and he saw a man get shot dead in front of him. 8 years old. How do you cope with that? But
right. Oh
yeah.
my God! I'd forgotten it was that young.
Yeah, he was about 8, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's worth reading, by the way, if anybody's out there and you'll want to know something about Phil Silvers, give that a read. It's a great book. Why? So there are not a lot of records with Phil on them necessarily. There's this. You got Top Banana. You've got Bilko Marches, which really is just him on the cover, if I'm not mistaken. I think
it's military big band music.
And is there another Bilko Marches type album?
There's 2. They did an EP and they did 3 albums with the brass percussions and music on it. But Phil may you probably know this. I don't know if you do.
I may or may not. I'm not sure.
But he did actually make a record in 1984.
I did not know this. Please.
Tracy's husband, Iron Costa. Mm-hmm. He was a musician at the time, and Phil was going through a little bit of a depression, so he basically coaxed him into the recording studio, and they recorded a disco record called the Bilko Growl.
Holy shit!
And it's basically Iron on vocals, on main vocals, and Phil doing all of his Bilko barks and his Bilko commands. So it's readily available on the DVD box set, the US DVD box set. But I'm more than happy to send you a file over with it. It's
oh my God. Bear
in mind it's 1984 and the music has dated very well. I wouldn't say badly, but it's you can tell it was recorded in the mid 1980s. But it's got Phil on it, and he's a darling on it, and he enjoyed it. It was a bit of fun, really, just to get him out of his condominium in 1984. So the Bilko Growl was a single which we tried to get released over here as a single at the time, and Steve Wright was a major DJ on the BBC, and he was plugging it, but it never saw the light of day. But it's still there for people to listen to.
So it never got
on YouTube as well.
It never got pressed in any way?
No. No.
What's so funny
it could do well with a remix. We could do a remix and make it a bit more contemporary now.
So good. That would be so good. It's when you're digging the thing is, I'm sure you've done all the digging necessary. You've even helped find missing episodes of Bilko, right? Am I not mistaken?
We've got every episode except the last 30 minutes of the Bilko special Keep in Step, which co-starred Saul Chaplin and Diana Dawes. We have the first half hour, which I don't believe CBS have got in their vaults.
Wow.
We've got it on 16mm film, but we're still searching. I mean, we got hold of this probably 15, 20 years ago, a long time ago. So we're still looking for the final half hour. We're also trying to get a good contact at CBS so that we can talk to them about, because obviously Jackie Gleason, I Love Lucy, they've all had major Blu-ray releases in the States.
Yeah.
But Bilko hasn't, so our question to see if we can get through to CBS is, CBS, where are the 35mm masters? And then we can probably talk about buying the rights to do a proper box set Blu-ray release, which is with a slew of extras on. It would just sell like hotcakes. Well, it's still hotcakes in the UK. I'm not sure about the States.
I know.
But,
good God, it's one of those things where I feel like, positioned properly, we could make a revival happen in the US. It just would take a lot of work, and it would take those one or two huge celebrities who are massive fans of his to just also not just it should be pointed out to people who aren't aware of this. Yes, there are celebrities who are massive fans. There are some of the biggest stars in American comedy were created because of the Bilko show, which is just as much because of Nat Hiken as it is because of Phil Silvers.
That's true, yes. Yeah.
But I mean, we're talking George Kennedy, we're talking Dick Van Dyke, Fred Gwynne, Dick Cavett, Alan Alda. How many other people got their start on this show? Like,
well, I mean, we can go right up to date because although the American viewing public really have forgotten Phil Silvers and the Bilko show, the people that are working in show business now haven't. So you've got you've got people like Mark Hamill, who's following me on Twitter.
Yes.
He's a massive fan. You've got I'd like to get in touch with him, but I presume you've watched Breaking Bad.
I've seen only a couple episodes, weirdly.
Well, the spin-off series or the prequel series, Better Call Saul, who's it's all about Saul Goodman, the Jewish lawyer. Well, Bob Odenkirk, who plays Saul, he's put a lot of Phil Silver's Bilko character into his Saul Goodman character.
Okay.
So sort of second season onwards, I think up to 5 seasons with Better Call Saul. It's like a modern day Bilko.
I love it.
He is so similar, and they got another actor in the show, and Vince Gilligan, who created Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. They're huge fans of Phil Silver.
That's good to know.
You've got these people that are working in television and working in the entertainment industry in the States that are huge fans, but it doesn't seem to go any further than that, and that's what we need to try and do. We need to try and get it out there and get the Americans watching Bilko again.
It's one of those things where I have been trying. By the way, I keep looking at the DVDs because my I had the DVDs and then didn't check to realize a couple of the discs were ruined. So got a very nice birthday present. My wife rebought the entire series for me, which is delightful. But first of all, I did not know that they were all on film. I guess it hadn't occurred to me. It's insane that they all exist. First of all, the 4 years of a show that started in 1955, that those still exist. And for those who are not aware, it's also about 1 billion episodes per season. I love that it is the exact opposite of an English show in that way too. They did about how many episodes per season? You're going to know.
I think there was about 32 episodes in the first season.
Crazy.
So, I mean, 143 in total, 144 in total over 4 years. It was a monumental task each week for Phil Silvers alone to learn his lines, staggering.
Have you come across or been provided with any original scripts from the show? Because I know you've met a lot of the actors who are on it.
Yeah, in the museum we've got 2 scripts kindly donated by Mickey Freeman, who played Private Zimmerman. So we've got 2 of his original scripts. As you probably know, we've got 5 of the original animation cells from the opening credits of the show. We've got 16 pages of storyboard artwork. I haven't quite got enough room to display everything at the moment. But yes, and we made contact with the last surviving actor of the platoon. Because what a lot of people don't realise that in 1955, when they cast the show, they actually cast 5 black actors in quite pivotal roles, and obviously CBS, the network, they weren't particularly happy with this.
Of course.
And the certain southern stations were refusing to show the show, but Nat Hiken and Phil Silver said, no, comedy is so crazy that it has to be rooted in reality, and these guys are part of the army and they're part of our show and they're not going anywhere, so they're staying. And it's really the first show to feature a multiracial cast. It was the first show really that had, because you'd got I Love Lucy and Jackie Gleason, it was the first show with an ensemble cast. So you've got, it paved the way for shows like Hill Street Blues and Taxi, which happens to be Phil's favourite comedy show of the 70s.
That's interesting.
So,
I love that. That's so good. So what is the name of the last surviving actor of the show? I can't remember.
That's a guy called Terry Carter, and he played one of the black actors. He played Shuggy Sugarman throughout the whole series. He went on to play Colonel Ty in Battlestar Galactica in the 70s series, and he also played Dennis Weaver's sidekick in McCloud.
Oh wow!
So he had quite he's we met him a couple of years ago. We met him in Reading at a Comic Con. He was doing a Battlestar Galactica reunion, but he emailed us and said, "Look, guys, we've spoken over so many years. We've never met. I'd love to meet you guys." And of course, he loved talking about Phil Silvers. So we spent about an hour with him and his lovely wife. And he's got amazing recall because he's nearly nearly, I don't think you mind me saying, he's nearly 90 now. But he looks amazing for his age, and amazing recall, and obviously fond memories of working with, with his first major role on television. Was working alongside Phil Silvers and the gang. So, he said life didn't really get any better than that.
That's so good. Oh, I love that. That is remarkable to hear. And I love that, again, also that, they know who to talk to. They know who, Steve's the guy to get a hold of. There's about a million things, because the thing is, we could probably talk in code about Phil Silvers on accident. So I'm trying to find a way to relate it to people who don't know more about Phil. Well, let's hop to this. So this is probably Do Re Mi is his first big production after Bilko ends, then, because he goes right back to the stage, which was his home. I'm betting you know way more about the history about Do Re Mi, so maybe you want to give me a bit of a what you know about it.
Phil finished Bilko. It was a bit of a shock to him, so he basically launched into 4 Phil Silvers specials with Nat Hiken for CBS, and then was offered the role of Hubie Cram in Do Re Mi, which started in 1960. Didn't have a terrifically long run, but was a very successful stage show. So it wasn't as successful as Top Banana, which was 1951. But as you alluded to, Phil, he loved the Bilko show. He loved television, even though Jack Benny warned him away from it years before. He loved Broadway, and he loved all of these shows.
Am I remembering correctly that the Phil Silvers show was the first show to dethrone Milton Berle's show? If I remember correctly, because it was Milton Berle was the height.
It didn't happen overnight. It was about 8 or 9 shows, and the ratings came in, and it was something like 26 for Berle and sort of 8 for Silvers, and it went on like that for weeks. And then Phil reckoned that the children always had the first refusal on what they were going to watch on TV, and he says the children found the show, and although it was an adult show, the kids could relate to it as well. And he'd refused to take any phone calls regarding the ratings because he got quite depressed over he said, I'm not going to topple Milton Berle. He is king of television. And then one day they'd been trying to get in touch with him, and he walked into the offices at CBS, and he said, I could feel this invisible electricity from all the people working in the offices. I've been trying to get in touch with him, and I said, Phil, look at this. And he looked at the ratings, and it went 26 for him and 8 for Milton, and that was it. He was off the air. So the mighty Bilko won out in the end.
I don't understand then how it only lasted 4 years. Although I guess in my head, there's also the idea that Lucy was on for years. No, Lucy just has never not been in repeats since the show ended. You sort of forget that, they did their run, and then, hopefully repeats kept them alive.
I think the writers were tiring during the 4th season, although there were still some really good gems in the 4th season. But I think the main consideration was money, and CBS wanted it to finish on a high, cash it in, and I think they sold it to NBC for daytime repeats.
Oh, okay.
For $2 million in 1959. So there was a lot of money passing hands, over the Bilko show. Unfortunately, Phil didn't get anything. He had 50% of the show, but he sold his rights to pay off a gambling debt. So
son of a gun.
That's
Oh boy, this is that is one of those things where if anybody knows Bilko, Bilko is a big gambler, and yes, of course, he's a sneaky son of a gun. But obviously, the gambling thing is the big thing that was based off of that, and his love of models was based off of Phil Silvers. What a fascinating dude he was, and also to know that he was as shy and retiring as you describe him, even though
I've spoken to a lot of people over the years. Now, I think it goes for a lot of comedians. They tend to be the polar opposite. They tend to be quite withdrawn, and they go into a cocoon, whereas the outlet for them is performing. Phil would get what he termed the whammies, on stuff when he was doing Broadway shows.
Yeah.
Get the whammies, he'd get so tied up in knots with nerves.
Yeah.
But as soon as he hit the stage, he'd gone. He was, he was on full power. That also happened when he toured in 1974. He toured the UK with A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
Mm-hmm.
And a stagehand that I know that donated some stuff for the museum, said that he watched Phil in his dressing room, and there was this old man huddled in a bathrobe waiting to go out onto the stage, looking really withdrawn and quite frail. This was like 2 years after he'd had his stroke. And then it was curtain call, and Phil just bounded out onto the stage and just gave this fantastic performance, and to be able to do that, it's it takes a lot of stamina.
My gosh. Yeah, that's wow. I guess I didn't realize it was so soon after the stroke that he was already up. A funny thing happened on the way to the Forum is not a small show. That is remarkable.
It was written specifically for Phil in 1962.
Oh, yeah.
He turned it down.
So it went to zero.
But he took on the revival in 72 and won a Tony Award. So
he was the first person to get a... Sorry, he was the first person to get a Tony for a revival, if I remember correctly, too.
Also first
remarkable.
Comedian.
That's nuts. That is so crazy. For Do Re Mi, Phil is on. He's on, a third of the tracks or so. He is probably still the cover. Yeah. He is the cover artist, though. Like, there's a great cartoon of him on the cover of the record, if you get the record that I have anyway. I think there might be another version of it. I'm not sure. But when did you first hear Do Re Mi, do you think?
I would have heard Do Re Mi. It was one of the first vinyl albums that I bought when I became a fan. So I probably heard Do Re Mi as early as probably late 80s, early 90s is when I first heard Do Re Mi. I went down to a musical soundtrack shop in Soho in London and bought probably about 25, 30 quid, which was a huge amount of money in those days.
Sure.
And played it on when I had a record player, and played it, and that's probably the first time I heard it. We did get some musical files of a live show as well, because they weren't filmed. There's nothing, as far as we know, in existence as regards this show. The only thing we have is the Top Banana film from 1954, which was a direct filming of one of the performances. But Do Re Mi was it was obviously just specifically tailored for Phil, and he, as usual, shone out.
Of course. What was you did mention when we were talking about it, your favorite track on the record?
Definitely my favorite track is All of Me. And it's just Phil, but he's very melancholy on this track, and it really does tug at the heartstrings, and it really shows you a different side to Phil Silvers, apart aside from the frenetic character of Hubie Cram that he's playing, and it shows his human side as well. So it's my favorite track because it's for people that only know, and there's a lot of people out there only know Phil as Bilko, and then to play something like this to them. And show them that he's got this other side. He was a serious actor. He could have been really good serious actor as well. But All of Me, All of My Life, it's called. Sorry, is is one of my favourite tracks. It's really, it really digs deep into your heartstrings.
Yeah, it's been a while, too, since I've listened to any of him singing, and I'm just like, oh, my God, the power behind this man's voice. Just like, again, my brain is always going to go to Bilko and always going to go to, that just fast-talking, blah, 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 just never do I think that man can take a breath and then just belt like that. But it's like, holy cow, that is coming out of that man.
His famous scene in... and I'm trying to remember the Bilko episodes. It's the famous one where he meets his psychiatrist.
Oh yeah,
and he does like 7 minutes non-stop talking, and the doctor is played by an actor called Nelson Olmsted, and you can see him biting his bottom lip, trying not to laugh because they cannot afford to reshoot this scene, and they just let the camera run, and of course it was filmed before a live audience as well. And when Phil finally stops talking, even my late mum said, she said, "Oh my God, is he ever going to stop talking?" Because he's like, he's just getting faster and faster. And then he stops, and there's this huge round of applause from the audience. And Phil is physically out of breath. It's just Nelson Olmstead's still trying not to laugh. He's still trying to stifle his laughs. But that sort of television is just, you don't get it nowadays. It's, we're living in different times, but for a show that was, that episode was 1957, 58. It's a show that I say to people that come to the museum, if you've not watched it for a few years, lucky you, because you'll go back and watch it, and it will still be funny. It will still be fast. It wouldn't have dated, and it hasn't dated, and that's the good thing about it. There are certain comedians that you can watch over and over again, and then there's comedians from today that you watch, you enjoy first time round, and you go back to watch them and rediscover them, and they're not as good as you remember them being. But with Bilko, with Phil Silvers, it's like a fine wine. It just improves with age all the time.
Which I think is one of the reasons maybe it might, again, this was maybe a mistaken way to think about it, but I feel like perhaps the reason they thought they could turn Bilko into a movie was actually because of him and his charm, rather than, even though I think the base of the show is good, and I think you could do a Bilko today if you wanted, and make it good if you stuck to the tenets of the original show. I remember when the movie came out, it was not long after I had joined the Phil Silvers Appreciation Society online, and I just remember there being not much debate. It was mostly like, it was fine. We all love Bilko, but we really miss Phil Silvers. Did you see it in theaters? Did you see Bilko?
I went to see it the first night. Yeah. I went to see it in Coventry when it came out in 1996. People ask me about it all the time in the museum, and I say, well, watch it as a police academy in the army type film. Yeah. Well, that's the sort of humor it is. It's not terrible. But sure, it's not Bilko. And interestingly, when Bilko became a success on CBS, I think towards the end of the first season, CBS were in talks with Phil to actually do a feature film of Bilko.
Oh my God!
In the 50s, during the first season, towards the end of the first season. But the Steve Martin, bless him, and he's a great comedian. I love his early work.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just think. His co-star in that film, the late Phil Hartman, God bless him, he had a better understanding of the Bilko character.
Yeah.
Whereas Steve Martin's character came over as a bit of a buffoon. He didn't know the rules and regulations. He didn't know how to book the system.
Yeah.
Whereas Bilko's character was very crafty. He knew every rule and regulation, and he knew how to book these systems and wrap himself around the colonel or the other officers, and that was the big difference for me. It was just, it's like every TV remake that they make into a feature film never really works. I mean, poor old Steve, he went and did Peter Sellers twice after the Bilko show, and it's just like Peter Sellers is irreplaceable as much as Phil Silvers is irreplaceable. So try and do something different. We are talking with somebody at the moment, trying to approach CBS or somebody to do a cartoon series. And now I know we had Top Cat, which is obviously heavily based on the Bilko show, but a cartoon Phil Silvers show, Bilko show, could possibly work.
Right.
But it's whether CBS would see any benefits to it.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, we're in a time where that could be definitely, at the very least, be a fun experiment, but also, I mean, cartoons are a little bit easier to make now, so it'd be easier to bang out some episodes, maybe not 43 a year or however many it was back then, but my goodness, that would be amazing. I would love to see that. One of the reasons I love following your stuff online is just like how constantly you're updating us on new stuff, and we're going to get to also Well, I will say, for my birthday, again, my wife was kind enough to get me one of the prints you did of the cells. I didn't know you had 5. How did you run across these animation cells from the opening of the show?
We got in touch with, well, about 6 or 7 years ago. It popped up on Facebook. There was it was like a display in a local library somewhere, and these animation cells were pinned up with drawing pins on a backing board.
Oh shit!
And Mick managed to contact the guy that owned the stills, the animation cells, and the storyboard artwork, and a guy called JJ Seidelmeyer, who obviously he knows a lot about animation. He worked in the animation industry, and then we lost contact with him, and then sort of 2016, I managed to contact him again and said, "Have you still got these animation cells?" And he said, "Yes, they're in my log cabin." He says they're all safely stored away. I'm not selling them. I said, "No, could we talk about having them on long-term loan for the museum?" And so, what museum? So we've just launched a Phil Silvers museum in the UK. And he's like, "Oh my God, have you? Right, okay, send me some details." So he checks us out on the internet, and he contacted me back, says, "I've got them. There's 16 pages of storyboard artwork. There's 5 animation cells. Do you want to buy them?" And he says, "Because what you're doing is just absolutely fantastic. And I'll take my hat off to you, and I will sell them to you." So long story short, we bought them. So they're a permanent exhibition. And, to have these, if you said to me, 65 years later after the Bill Cosby show, "I've got some animation cells than the original ones," I would have said, "I'll have those odds on the lottery, please," because to find them, I don't know what they're worth. We contacted the BBC to see if they wanted to try and value them through the Antiques Roadshow program that they do. Never heard back from them, but that's another story. But yeah, to have those, it's just it brings a lot of people in. Phil Jupitus, who's a very famous British comedian, he's been to the museum twice, and he's a big animation fan.
Okay.
So I let him hold one of the original animation cells, and he was just quivering with excitement.
Oh my God.
That's the sort of, these are like the holy grail of the Bill Cosby show.
Yeah.
So we'd like to try and get more stuff, but it's just trying to find out what CBS have got in their vaults. So we need a good contact in New York, really.
And people weren't. There was a very extended point, literally decades after stuff like this was made, where people they still weren't preserving anything. There's the notorious how all of Python's library almost got wiped out. A bunch of Doctor Who's were wiped out just because they just didn't. BBC wasn't valuing them, and so that kind of stuff happened here too, where nobody was preserving anything. The only place it was in the hands of the actors who worked on the show or crew. And then once those people pass away, that stuff goes in a box, gets sold, and it's depressing. And I don't want to think about it. But you do have a few other things. I'm assuming most of the stuff you have that was Phil's came from his family, right? Do you have a pair of his glasses? Am I remembering correctly?
We have a pair of his spectacles, yes. We have his Beverly Hills bathrobe. We have his Dodgers blanket. We have his favorite smoking jacket. Okay. We have a pair of his shoes with his shoehorn. We have one of my favorite pieces is his driving license from 1982.
Love it. Okay.
We've got his Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences membership cards. So we've got a lot of very personal stuff, which have very kindly been donated on long-term loan by his family. So we've got one of his hats from Top Banana as well. That's a recent acquisition that came via one of Phil's relatives. So they love what we're doing, because obviously we talked at length about taking the museum over to the States, but it's where would we relocate it, and would people want to come along and look at it? But there's some good museums in the States.
Sure.
You've got the Comedy Museum. You've got the Jimmy Stewart Museum. You've got the Judy Garland Museum. So there's a lot of the Lauren Hardy Museum over there.
Oh yeah.
So, but it just seems that Phil isn't held in the same esteem as those that I've just mentioned. But we'd love to, we'd have loved to have gone over there and tried to educate
I hope at some point, at least now that because the Comedy Museum that is in a weird part of upstate New York. I know it's not weird. It's where Lucille Ball grew up, but it is an out of the way location in terms of going to a museum. That does seem to have, it's a quickly growing reputation. So maybe at some point,
is that the Lucille Ball Museum?
Yes, yeah, yes. Basically, even though
that's
it is
in Jamestown, her hometown.
Yes, it is, and so they also have. I don't know about bought, but they have acquired like George Carlin's archives. They've acquired a bunch of other archives, and they obviously, I'm assuming, then have visiting, exhibits. So I hope at some point maybe that would be a really good place if at some point they're like, hey, we'd love to collaborate with you, Steve. That would be.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, because I'm thinking that the Lucille Ball Museum, because I looked at it online, and I'm thinking that they must have some input, some collaboration with CBS. So they must be, but they don't seem to want to. This is why we need to get a contact and say, look, CBS, look what we're doing to keep Phil Silver's name alive over here in the UK.
Right.
Yeah.
You
want to help us? It's because we've done all this off our own back. It's all been self-financed, and we have overheads just like any other museum, and we're all going through tough times at the moment. But we're bobbing our heads above water. So we've expanded recently, and we're ready to welcome new visitors, and they're starting to trickle in. But a lot of the sensible people are being very cautious until we know what's going on with this virus that we're all blighted with at the moment.
Do you find when people, are coming in, or were coming in maybe a little bit more previously, but, just because of the pandemic, but is there any kind of multi-generational appreciation for Phil Silvers, like families who pass that down, or is it people of a certain age who do have a memory of his repeats airing?
Certainly, we welcome visitors from all walks of life, from all over the world, and really all ages. We don't get a lot of younger people in. I normally talk to the youngsters about Top Cat, because they would have watched Top Cat when they was a kid, and then explain to them that it was all based on the Bilko show. But yes, certainly when we first became fans, Bilko's fan base was very male dominated.
Okay.
Women didn't like Bilko back in the mid-80s. This is and now that's changed over the years, and you've got people like actors like Maureen Lipman. You've got a lot of ladies that are coming into the museum that like Phil Silvers. There's a young lady in the States that is absolutely besotted with Phil. Really reckons he's quite handsome, and so we do get people from all ages, but generally it's from people of my sort of age, like mid-50s, that grew up watching Bilko on the BBC when it was a late night show, and it would be on a Sunday night, and you'd come in from the pub, and it was the last show before close down, so you'd watch Bilko before you went to bed to start your working week again. So, and then you get a lot of people that come in that have served in the armed forces. So they'll say, I mean, that's another reason why the Bilko show is still relevant, is like, oh, I served in this platoon, and yes, we had a Bilko platoon. He was selling us cigarettes and stockings and stuff. So, it also touched on quite a few truisms with the Army. I mean, the Alvin Palvin episode, apparently US enlistees trebled when that episode went out, because they thought the Army was so much fun with having Alvin Palvin. And Phil felt a little bit guilty about that. He says, because obviously the Army is not like it is on the Bilko show.
Right.
People, these teenagers were queuing up to be recruited into the Army.
Oh my God!
The power of television.
Right.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. Oh shoot! What was I just going to ask you? Oh my God, my brain just completely fried because I'm so son of a gun. It's too early. It's not that early at all. What was I going to ask you? Oh my goodness, it was about. Oh no! How did I just completely blank on what I was going to ask you? It was obviously about Bilko, about the museum, probably. Well, we'll get back to it. I'm going to make a note.
It'll come back
Jason's
to you.
brain stopped for 2 seconds. Let's just make a note there. It was probably going to be... Okay, no, we already talked about that. No, it was about... Son of a gun. Specifically about the audience. This is really driving me crazy. It's interesting. So I have thought about, because I'm part of, I'm a fan of a lot of things, but I would say the two shows that I'm biggest fans of are Bilko and the show News Radio, which I know has never had much of a presence in the UK, but
Which one's that?
It was Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall, Phil Hartman, the aforementioned Phil Hartman, and a bunch of other American actors who haven't made a dent, but Phil Hartman is the big one. Although, I will say one of the more prominent members of our little community is in the UK, but I know he's like, yeah, nobody here knows what the hell I'm talking about when I quote that show. So it is one of those that did not cross over. But the Phil Hartman thing is always fascinating to me, and it makes me so happy that he, who was probably my biggest acting hero, was as big a Phil Silvers fan as you could find. There's that, isn't there? I feel like there's a couple old promo videos from the Bilko movie where he's just doing Bilko and Colonel Hall talking to each other, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Like he's
No, you're right. He does a very good impersonation. Voice-wise, he's very close to Phil's, and that's why I thought he would be good. He would have been good for the movie, but not doing a direct impersonation of Phil Silvers. Just that he could understand the character better and the mannerisms. I think God bless him, he would have done a good job. Whereas Steve just didn't quite cut it with the audience, sadly. The other guy, I don't think he was approached to do it, but I think he could have put his own spin on the Bilko character, and he also retained that same energy that Phil had when he was making Bilko, and that would have been the late Robin Williams.
My goodness, yeah. I mean,
could have done something with it, but it wasn't to be. It was...
No, it's true. I interestingly, so you mentioned earlier, this is what I had entirely forgotten. You'd mentioned earlier people talking about, we had a Bilko. A few years ago, I was working, I don't know where the heck I was working, but a gentleman who would come in every once in a while was an accountant, and he was older than he looked, and he would just tell me stories about, I was at no point did Bilko come up in these conversations, and you'll understand why in a second. I was in the military during the Korean War, and blah, 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 and just talking about all this stuff and how, I stuffed footlockers with snacks and cigarettes and things, and it slowly became clear that he was the Bilko of it, and I had to bring it up. I'm like, so you were the Sergeant Bilko of your platoon? And he's like, yeah, I guess I was. And I was just so happy that not only was he the Bilko, but it was during the exact time that the show was on and had gone on. The idea, though, that the idea that Bilko would then go on to be an accountant was an insane idea. That he seemed like a lifetime soldier. Although I also love when he would, he had a love-hate thing with it, which I always loved about the character. We haven't talked about this. What is your absolute favorite episode of the Phil Silver Show? Do you have one? It's often not fair to ask someone to pick, but
it's a difficult one, and it changes. It changes between 3 episodes. Obviously, I'm going to say the court martial with Harry Speakup, because it's still on record as a half-hour situation comedy with the most laughs. It holds that record.
I love it.
It was also Phil's favourite episode.
Okay.
But Phil also had another favourite episode, and that was The Empty Store, which happened to be the first episode that I watched back in 1981. So that's my favourite. But I have a particular fondness for Bilko's Perfect Day. It's when the gods have ordained that it's going to be Bilko's day, and no matter what he does, he'll win, and he doesn't realise until the last hour of the day, and he's trying to get a bet down on a horse race in Melbourne, Australia. And it's just, I love it because the way all of the plot dovetails into this glorious ending. But it's just and it's a Nat Hiken episode, obviously, and it's just so beautifully written, so well orchestrated. And you've got people like Paul Lipson as the bookie in it, who gets mown down. But it's just a fantastic episode. But But yeah, it changes depending on what season I'm delving into. But yeah, I would say, oh gosh, the twit I was watching today in the museum because we were open today. But yeah, if you push me, I'd probably say Bilko's Perfect Day or The Empty Store.
Okay. Okay, good. And I have pushed you, and you have you've pushed back and won. I I love obviously that you're running episodes. Tell people a little bit more about the museum because we haven't really talked about what it is because it is a shop, it is a museum, it's an archive, it's all kinds of things.
It is, yeah. We've got. I started a small business in 2015 at a creative village that had just launched in Coventry called Fargo Village. So I launched in a little shipping container, and all I was selling was movie and TV collectibles. So we named the shop Sergeant Bilko's Vintage Emporium. And then in it's September 2015, I wanted to move into a bigger unit, but you had to show that you're being creative. And I said, well, all I'm selling TV, collectibles. How much more creative can one get? But I want to do a museum. We've always talked about doing a museum, and they love that idea. So basically, we started with a very small corner of the shop being the museum. And we set it out and did all the displays and set everything up, and then it's just grown from there. So we've been doing the museum now for 5 years, and we've attracted quite a few famous visitors. The aforementioned Phil Jupiters has been to see us twice. Mark Hamill regularly promotes us on Twitter.
Yeah,
we've had visits from, I'm just trying to think, British comedians Tim Vine. Tim Vine. Danny Baker, broadcaster. Paul Merton.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, he's a very famous. So we've had a lot of famous people visiting. So we're working on, when this COVID-19 is over, that we can invite a few more people back to the museum.
That would be amazing.
We've grown this during lockdown. We wanted to try and turn the coronavirus into a great positive because the whole village was closed down in March. So we launched a crowdfunder because we were already thinking about expanding the museum. We had a successful crowdfunder, and we expanded the museum, which now occupies half of the unit that I'm in. So half's got the shop, half's got the museum, and we have a little 1949 television set with a 9-inch screen, which is showing Bilko round the clock whilst we're open. And we've expanded with another 4 display cabinets in there to house the new acquisitions we've had from the family, the top banana hat and everything. So It's going really well. And obviously, we just need to get back up to speed now and try and get back to some form of normality.
Sure.
On the retail side of things and getting a few more people back in to the museum. But yeah, we're also working on launching a virtual tour of the museum. There is one of the old museums, so you can sort of put yourself outside the front of the shop and actually walk through the shop and into the museum and walk around the museum. But of course, now we've expanded to half the shop. We need to do a new virtual tour.
That's great.
So it's a labour of love. Mick came down during lockdown when it was safe to do so and brought some more stuff down. So yeah, it's Tim Vine spent 2 hours in there. We just left in the smaller museum. So when he comes back, we just left him for 2 hours because he sort of soaked up all of the artifacts and stuff in there because there's just so much stuff crammed into a very small area. But it's all, as people tell me, it's all perfectly laid out, so you can see everything. It's really, really nice. We had a lovely compliment the other day from a guy that came from Birmingham, and he'd been to the Laurel and Hardy Museum, which is in Stan Laurel's hometown in Ulverston.
Okay.
And he said he really enjoyed his visit to the Laurel and Hardy Museum, but it was very haphazard in its displays.
Okay.
And then he said, I've come here and it's literally blown me away. He says, because what you've done here is absolutely amazing and a great testament to to the memory of Phil Silvers. So we know we're doing something right, and we just obviously want to build on that. Mm-hmm. Saying that, I want to eventually, and I need to talk to the people at Fargo, is that we at the moment we're the Phil Silvers Museum or the Phil Silvers Archival Museum. Eventually, I'd like it to be the Phil Silvers Comedy Museum, mm-hmm. and then we can expand our displays to include other comedians.
That'd be
so
amazing.
It becomes a comedy museum,
mm-hmm.
but its mainstay is Phil. Phil will be the central theme of the museum. But we could have offshoots because there's so many. Like you alluded to earlier, there's so many British comedy connections mm-hmm. to not just the Bilko show, but what Phil did in the rest of his career. Mm-hmm. And he's probably, looking back on it, he's probably the most influential American comedian on British comedy. Yeah. And obviously the only American to star in a Carry On film as well.
That's the other
which
thing,
divides a lot of people and divides a lot of Carry On fans. Don't tend to appreciate the sophistication of the Bilko show. They like their comedy like Carry On, which is very broad mm-hmm. And very basic, but mm-hmm. very good,
Sure.
But they don't like this loudmouth American being a Carry On film.
I do, one of the things about him was always, obviously, he was incredibly self-aware of how loud he was being. He knew what he was. There's no way that man didn't know. I mean, Bilko's funny because he's a brash idiot. Like, he's not an idiot. He's not stupid, but he's an ass. He's a bit of a jerk. And then, of course, he's one of those jerks with a heart of gold. My favorite characters always.
About to say it, yeah. Because on paper, the Bilko character, if you look at him on paper, he's mm-hmm. not a particularly pleasant character. But you root for him, because you would like to do what Bilko does on the show. You'd like to have mm-hmm. the nerve to be able to do that. But ultimately, yes, he's this conniving gold bricker, mm-hmm. but he's got this, as you said, he's got this heart of gold, and he will help his buddies, and that's what makes him lovable, and it makes the character believable, and it shows that he has another side to it, and that's why the show has lasted so long in the UK, I think, because we identify with him so much, and mm-hmm. More so than any other comedy show. And you have shows like Only Fools and Horses mm-hmm. and Porridge that have drawn a lot of inspiration from the Bilko show by creating these slightly off-kilter characters, mm-hmm. but characters that you can identify with and eventually, find some fondness and love for them as well. So they're not totally unlikable.
There's another bit of crossover this is making me think of. You mentioned earlier that Mark Hamill's a big Bilko and Phil Silvers supporter. He is also a huge news radio fan. So he is a fan of both of my two favorite shows, which is another reason why, Mark, you're welcome on any of my podcasts anytime. I know you're not listening, but I'm going to say it anyway. He is one of those guys who, at the very least, I know that we have the exact same taste in comedy, because the man, he knows it. And I think Phil Hartman's character on news radio is another example of one of those bastards with a heart of gold that I think who's worth exploring for those who don't know. But I mean, just an absolute genius, and obviously had very similar influences. I love that Phil Silvers was such a huge influence on him. Steve, this has been an absolute delight. I would like you to tell people, pardon me, at first, actually, tell them why to listen to Do Re Mi if they've never heard it before.
So, sorry, say again.
Tell them why to give the Do Re Mi soundtrack a listen if they've never heard it before. What's a good sales pitch?
Because it will give you a completely different viewpoint on Phil Silvers if you only know him from the Bilko show. It shows you what a versatile all-round entertainer Phil was. And people don't realise, he had a huge 60-year career in Hollywood in show business. And he performed in most of those genres. But the Broadway show, 5 smash Broadway shows, and Do Re Mi is one of his greatest successes after Top Banana. And you will undoubtedly be impressed with his whole performance.
I think so too. I'm glad you made me re-listen to, because I'm realizing I realized this morning, like, I don't think I'd listened to the entire thing previously. I owned it because I wanted it and I wanted it in my hands, but today I finally had an excuse to listen to the whole thing. I'm like, oh wow, I've been missing out. What an idiot.
Well, I'll be going back to listen to it as well because I haven't listened to the whole album through for a couple of years probably.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Phil's tracks are still my favorite, but yes, it's in general, it's a good record to listen to. Tell people where they can find you, where they can find the museum, if there's anything coming up, either online or otherwise, they should be aware of.
Okay, to find me, obviously all social media channels. So Facebook, we have a page for the shop, for the Emporium. We have a page for the museum. Twitter, Tumblr. And we are based just outside of Coventry. So we're in a village called Fargo Village, Fargo. We're currently on reduced hours while the coronavirus is continuing. So we are open from Thursday through to Sunday, 11 till 4. But once things settle down a bit, we'll be expanding our hours from Tuesday through to Sunday. Saying that, we are also working on an online booking system for the museum, so that you can book a specific day and time to come and see us. All my contact details are on all the social media channels. All you've got to do is ping me an email or a text message, and I live about 15 minutes away from the museum. So even if I'm closed one day and somebody's gone down there thinking that I'm open, I normally say, go grab a coffee, I'll be there in 10 minutes. So
there you go.
So yeah, we're always there for people. You know.
I will say the museum is one of the many reasons I am looking forward to being able to travel again when and if that's possible. We'll say when. I want to be hopeful. When that is possible again, it is one of the many reasons. I really love what you're doing. Not just because it's Phil Silvers, but because I'm a big fan of people who are out there trying to preserve comedy. It's a passion of mine. I do it on the side, and I don't do it in any way that where people. It's so funny. So again, the show. It's funny to talk to you about a show that you're not familiar with, but News Radio. I have a lot of props from the show, and it's because, frankly, not enough people appreciate it over here. People barely know it over here. And so it's been easier for me to, interview almost everybody from the show, and get a hold of stuff from the show. And people are like, when are you going to open your News Radio Museum? And I'm like, I've got you in the back of my head. I'm like, I'm not turning the idea down, but that is exactly what you were saying. The other option is, like, if you're going to do it, make it a comedy museum that has this little focus. And then also, you smartly are like, well, also it started as a shop where I sell stuff that people, that sells a bunch of Daleks. Who doesn't want to buy a Dalek? And then also, hey, by the way, here's Phil Silvers. Why don't you check out Phil Silvers? It's a nice way to get people interested in something that might be obscure to them or completely unknown to them. It's a smart way to do it, and it's generous to the legacy of somebody who I obviously adore. So it's a good thing you're doing, and I know you already know that, but I wanted to make sure I expressed that. And also, I need to thank my wife for talking me out of of buying the cell myself and then doing it sneakily.
That was a big kept secret, wasn't it?
It was good. That was very smooth. That was very smooth. She knew. She knew how much I wanted
that it wasn't going to get damaged in transit as well. It was like,
oh my goodness,
huge sigh of relief when it had arrived in one piece. I was like, brilliant. Yes, lovely.
It's so good. I'm now trying to find the right spot on my wall, which is covered with records. So I've got to take a few down and put that up because it is something that I have loved so much. Steve, this has been a delight. You are welcome back anytime, of course. We'll probably talk about Phil Silvers again, but who cares? Who doesn't like to talk about Phil Silvers? And everybody, please check out the museum. Please follow Steve everywhere you can. And as always, have a good thing. Comedy on Vinyl is a production of StolenDress Entertainment. It is produced by Mike Warden and is hosted and edited by Jason Klom. Our theme song was composed and performed by Richard Levinson. You can email us at podcast@comedyonvinyl.com. You can also send snail mail to StolenDress Entertainment, P.O. Box 805, Burbank, California, 91503. Subscribe to Comedy on Vinyl on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Comedy on Vinyl, or find everything in one place at comedyonvinyl.com. A major portion of Comedy on Vinyl has been underwritten by Stand Up Records. Please visit standuprecords.com for all your comedy needs and tune in to the new Stand Up Records channel available on the Roku, where you can also find select episodes of this podcast. Visit StolenDress.com to listen to our other podcasts, watch videos, and imbibe freely of our multimedia content going back 15 plus years. StolenDress Entertainment.
Hey, it's my turn. Ah!